we've got this weird problem of taking in derelicts. I tell you what, it's like a disease. We get rid of one and then another one shows up. So I'm going to show you our current project we're working on. We've actually had this car for a little while, and this is actually the second time we've had this car. It was actually on the site listed as first as a story that we just featured, and then as a classified. Jesse ended up contacting the seller after it got listed on the site as a classified, and we ended up buying it and had it shipped all the way from California. There it is. So it's a 1967 MG Midget. So 67 is actually a really good year for these cars. You got the 1275, you got disc brakes in the front, you got the rib case transmission, lots of the improvements that people want in the earlier cars, these just had. And kind of a funny story how this all worked out. So we bought it. Like I said, we got it shipped here. Then another project showed up that was a big headache, big project. And so we had to decide what we were going to do, if we were going to try to take this one on, take that one on. And we ended up taking that one on, and we sold this one to a guy here locally in Boise. And it was kind of a mess. The coolant system was full of rat's nests. Hoses were all chewed up. It needed a lot of service work. Now, I mean, the bones are really good on the car. It's not rusty. The engine had compression turned over, but it needed a lot of sorting. Well, so he started on it, and he got a lot of the work done, and a lot of the work that I didn't want to have to do. But then, unfortunately, his life situation changed, and he had to move, so he had to sell the car. So we had told him if he ever decided to sell it after he got it done to let us know. So he called Jesse up and said, "Hey, I'm moving. I need to sell the car." So we went and looked at it, and he fixed all the things that I didn't want to have to do, which is awesome. And he did pretty nice work, honestly. It still needs some things, so I've been working on it today. Trying to get the engine to read oil pressure. I'll go show you here in a sec on the other side what I've had to do. A-series engines in these little cars, kind of funny how the oiling system works, but not sure why he didn't finish getting the car running. That was pretty much all he had left to do. He'd already done the brakes. He'd replaced all the coolant lines, the thermostat. He had taken the head off, replaced the head gasket, checked the head. He repainted everything, put it back together, rebuilt the carbs. He put the spare fuel tank we had, he put that in. He put a new fuel pump in it, tested that. There were some holes that had been cut in the transmission tunnel for access. He patched those back up, had those welded back shut. Pretty much all that was left to do was to bleed the brakes and get the engine running. But I'm guessing he was having a hard time getting oil pressure to read on the gauge. And so let's go over there real quick, and I'll show you what you have to do to get oil pressure on these when they've been sitting. So when these engines have been sitting for a while, all the oil drains down into the oil pan. And typically that isn't really a problem because your oil pump's in the oil pan, right? But there's lots of weird little passages on these, and you got to have a good suction on there or it won't get oil. So you got to prime the pumps. And to do that, you got to take this line off, take this banjo bolt off, and this line goes down to the oil filter housing. So when that gets dried out or drained all the way out, you don't have any oil up here, and that pump can't prime itself. So what you got to do is take this tube off and pour oil right into the block. Well, now that gets you primed, but that doesn't necessarily get oil everywhere you need to. He appeared he'd primed it, and it was flowing oil through here like it's supposed to, but he wasn't getting any oil up into this line. Now this is the line the hard line that goes to your, it goes into a hard line up here, but it goes into your oil gauge, and that's how you read the oil pressure. Well, there's another chamber that runs down below here that has to be primed, and if it doesn't have oil in it, this can flow, but that down there won't, and you won't ever read oil pressure. And obviously you don't want to try to start an engine that you're not reading oil pressure. You want to know whether you have oil flowing or not. So what I had to do was take the banjo bolt out and this hose off, and then I primed both just to be safe. I reprimed both. Got oil flowing up here again. Wasn't getting any oil here. Well, there's a little adapter that goes between the hard line. Let's see if I can get a better angle there. you can see there's a metal fitting that goes into the block, and then you have a compression fitting on this hard line that comes up, and then this soft hose clamps onto that hard line and then goes up to the gauge. Well, so you have to take the fitting out of the block and then prime it. Now there's a little it's an oil galleyway is what it is, but it's got a little opening in there. It's pretty small. I had to run well, actually I have it right here. I ran a brush through it. Let's see if I can get it out. So I ran this brush in there, and you can still see there's some black gunk on there. Cleaned out the hard stuff from sitting, and then poured oil into it and turned the engine over. Now I'd put oil in all of our cylinders just to be safe. I still have the spark plugs loose. I didn't want it blowing Marvel Mystery Oil everywhere. We got compression. It moves these around when you turn it over. Once I had it all primed, had that all primed down there, then I turned it over, and it pumped a little bit of oil out, but we didn't get much. Well, it's because you have to put that fitting back on, because it's got a little tiny hole that oil has to throw through. So it creates back pressure, limits how much oil. That way you kind of regulate the flow of oil up into this. Got that done, and then you got to bleed this line, because if you got air in this line, it's not gonna show up on the gauge either. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over. I've turned it over a little bit. It dumped oil all over down on our trailer here, which is a mess. I'll clean that up later, and you can see it's got oil all over the hose now. But I'll go ahead and turn it over. We'll see what kind of oil pressure we're getting. So let's go look inside real quick. As you can see here inside, it's a little bit of a mess, but I mean the seat upholstery is not too bad. The floors are really good. Biggest thing is just this tunnel needs new carpet, and we need new carpet on the floor. But let's go ahead and take a look at this oil gauge here real quick and see what kind of oil pressure we're getting. 60, that's what we want at startup. You want to pull, well, the handbook says between 30 and 50, but you know, it's got fresh oil, 20-50 weight. So I'm sure once we run it for a little while, that'll come down. But yeah, I want to get this project done. It's been sitting on this trailer for the last month, and it's time to get it done. We've been selling off other projects to make room for this project and one other project that we just purchased. But I thought I'd show you real quick what we're doing on this one, because this is a cool little car. We still don't know if it's going to run. That's my goal today, is to see if we can get it to fire and run. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off, and then I'm going to do my other prep work here to see if we can get it to start. I'll try to have the camera set up so we can show you starting it for the first time. This escalated a little bit more than I was expecting it to, so decided to check the wiring real quick because the coil was disconnected, and discovered that I wasn't getting any power from the key to the coil. So I went ahead and hot wired it, so to speak. I ran a wire directly from the battery down to the coil's positive terminal, and then a wire over to the distributor. And then I went ahead and sprayed some starter fluid in there, because I don't know if the carbs are set correctly or if we're even getting fuel. But let's go ahead and try it and see if it'll fire up. Fingers crossed. Okay. Nothing. I wonder if we're getting spark now. Oh, the fun joys of troubleshooting, right? Okay. Let's see. Are we plugged in there? We're plugged in there. Oh, that had popped out. So we need all new wires, and then we got to figure out what's going on with the electrical stuff. But let's try it again, see what we have happen. Okay, so far no go. Okay, let me try a few more things, and then we'll try again. So I did some more testing on the wiring, and I think I got everything figured out on the electrical side. I adjusted the points. The points weren't done at all, and so I adjusted the point, and then I put the rotor and cap back together, checked all my wires. This guy keeps coming loose, so out of the coil, so obviously we got to replace that. We didn't have a wire coming from the coil to the distributor, so I just went ahead and made one. We'll do a nice one later. I'm going to test the whole wiring harness. I finally wiggled stuff around. The wire, the hot wire coming from the ignition, from under the dash was loose, so I fixed that. I also checked the carbs, and there's an adjustment on the bottom of the carbs. They were not set, so I went ahead and set those. They're still going to need some tinkering and adjustment, I'm sure. I haven't started it yet. But let's go ahead and see if we're going to fire up and run. Okay, come on in here. Okay, so make sure I got the choke out. Okay, choke's out. Okay, for startup. Let's hope it works. Oh, listen to that. Choke's kind of finicky. Okay, so it looks like tach's not working, but we got good oil pressure. Okay, let's. Yeah, the fun's just begun probably. Okay, let's see if that's gonna. Okay, a little high rev, but well, it ran. Okay, well, so we got to go through and figure out some stuff on the carbs. I'd say those are definitely our big issue now. That and that carb linkage or that choke linkage. Let's go over and take a look at it real quick. Yeah, but if I climbed in on the driver's side though, I could fire it up and get it running. One of the things I noticed when I came over here to work, see if I can get my shadow out of the way. One of the things I noticed over here was that the choke linkage was not hooked up, so this isn't the right screw. This screw looks like it's probably the correct screw for this linkage bar. This one is not, but both were loose. You have to take these off when you take the carbs out. So I'm guessing that was part of our problem before. I went ahead and tightened those down. I have tons and tons of these SU carbs, so I have new screws for it that'll work. Or I mean, they're old screws, but they're the correct screws. I also took the floats off, the lids off the float bowls. Both look like they're flooding a little bit. These it still had the original plastic floats in them, and they tend to develop leaks. So I'll take the carbs back off and probably zero them all out, and I'll check the floats and replace them. I have some newer plastic ones. We might get some metal ones though. The metal ones tend to never leak. But yeah, definitely some adjustments need to be done here on the carbs. I'm sure they'll have to be synced back up if they've been off. It looks like we're also still leaking a little bit of fuel here. Usually when the floats are set, or when the floats are set wrong, they'll definitely flood. Sometimes when these aren't seated correctly down here, it'll flood, but I'm guessing it's our floats are not set right and we're flooding out. So we'll get that fixed. There's no oil in the dash pots either, in the pistons, and so that's gonna affect how it runs, but I don't think that's our problem right now. Let's go ahead and start it one more time. I didn't even see smoke coming out of the exhaust, and that's surprising. I put Marvel mystery oil in this just earlier today, so pretty amazing. But let's climb inside and oh, up on the trailer here, so a little sketch. But let's try it one more time and see inside the car how it does. Choke in. Yeah, it doesn't want to run without the choke, so we'll have to set those carbs. Our oil pressure seems a little too high too, so I'll probably have to take the shut this off. Probably have to take the oil pressure relief valve out and clean it. It may need to be shimmed. We need to get that down in that 30 to 40 range. Yeah, now we can start going through though and figuring out what all is wrong, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be replaced. That's a good start. I can't believe it runs. I honestly don't know when this ran last, so pretty exciting. But yeah, there we go. We got it running. As you can see, this is a pretty big project, but it's such a small car, right? It's not a huge project in that sense. We got some other projects we're working on in the shop right now. Hopefully we'll have space for this one in the shop today or tomorrow. Well, tomorrow or the following day, I should say, to get this one inside so we can really start hammering out everything on it. It's going to be a fun little car. You don't see a lot of the 67s around. We like even the rubber bumper midgets, so we're excited to have this. This is the first time we've had a non-rubber bumper midget, so we're excited to see how it is and get it back on the road. I'm going to put in an order today for all the brake parts that we need so we can get the brakes done. And then we got to decide what we're going to do next once we get it on the road, whether we're going to put a whole new interior in it or if we're going to just clean it up, replace what has to be replaced, and just reuse what we can. That's kind of the direction I'm leaning with it, because it's kind of fun that it's not perfect. We can just drive it and have a hoot in it and not worry about it. Yeah, it's a sweet little machine. So be sure to subscribe to our channel to see more updates on it. I'm sure we'll be doing more videos on it as we get it pieced back together. If you've never checked out barnfinds.com, be sure to check out the site. We have lots of cool projects on there, and we're helping people buy and sell stuff all the time. So be sure to check it out.